This week's episode of the Deep Spirituality Podcast is for parents, specifically parents of teens or college students, though we believe it'll benefit any parent. The last 2+ years of disruption from the pandemic have been hard on teens, college students, and their parents. We recorded this special episode to encourage and strengthen those families. This parenting discussion is based on the core spiritual principles found in Psalm 127, which says, "Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously waiting for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates." We hope you enjoy this excerpt from The Myth of the Perfect Family. Be sure to check out the full episode on your favorite podcast app.
But I want to run through a couple of things because I think people are hurting out there that are parents. I think they're worn out. I think they're exhausted. I think they're tired. The UNICEF put out a report that says 27% of the teenagers that they polled felt anxiety and 15% felt depressed. Young women reported specifically 27% feeling anxiety, 15% feeling depression. I think we're living at a time in the pandemic where that's the case, where because of the pandemic, people are feeling, and girls in particular here, an increase, or 27% feel anxiety, 15% feel depression. The research also found that 1 in 2 teenagers felt less motivated to do activities they normally enjoy. That's 50% of teenagers felt less motivated to do activities they normally enjoy. So if you're out there listening and you're wondering, well, why am I so tired? Or why is life so much more stressful? It's because not only are we feeling our burdens, but our kids are feeling more burdened than they should. 43% in the UNICEF, 43% of young women feel pessimistic about the future compared to 31% of men. So you've got over 30% of men, over 40% of young women feeling pessimistic, negative, not thinking things are going to work out. And so if you're out there listening and you're wondering, maybe why am I dealing more with discouragement in my kids? Why maybe are they being more resistant or stubborn? It can be because they're getting more pessimistic. Why are their grades dropping? And so it's important for us to see the landscape of the post-pandemic, not that we've gotten past the pandemic, but after the surge of 2 years, that we look at that. And sometimes we just want to run on and keep going instead of take a look at this. Among those who felt the need to ask for help regarding their physical and mental well-being, 1 in 3 asked for help from their closest circle of family and friends. Now, that's really important because sometimes as parents, we can think that we don't have any influence and our kids don't want to listen to us. And yet, 1 in 3 kids are looking to family and they're looking to friends for the support they need in the midst of this. And finally, 3 out of 4 have felt the need to ask for help regarding their physical and mental well-being. So it's not just emotional health. They're feeling it physically, and I know we can all feel it physically. Despite having felt the need to do so, 2 out of 5 did not ask for any help. So it's very possible that we've got a kid that we may think, I'm a bad parent. And I think there's a lot of information out there that sort of promotes the idea of parents need to get better. They need to know how to talk to their kid. They need to know how to listen to their kid. They need to know. And so I think a lot of parents feel a tremendous amount of stress. And I juxtapose these two things: the desire to be the parent we need to be, but we're not getting the outcome we want with our kid. And then the discouragement that comes from that, because we feel like we're failing as a parent. And I'm not sure outside of marriage there's anything more discouraging to feel like you're as a failure as a parent. So what I want you guys to talk about for a moment is, how do you manage, and you can just kind of roll this over in your mind a little bit, how do you manage discouragement as a parent? Because I think the primary burden in the myth of perfection is the expectation that we can solve all of our kids' problems, the expectation that we can protect them from everything, the expectation that we got to be able to sit down with them and persuade. That's what frustrates me, is that sense of I need to be the do-all. Now, I would interject in there. I think that that's where God comes in, but maybe you can talk about it, because I think a lot of people really need help. From people I've talked to, they really need help knowing how to handle this discouragement, this sense of failure, because they have this outcome they think they ought to be getting, and they're not getting it. Can Ray, can you maybe start us on that, Ray or Amy?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, the discouragement, that rings true, whether it is, we have a son with special needs, and there's certain outcomes I would always want him to respond a certain way. And more recently, just my daughter, who is transitioning from teenage years to college. Initially, my discouragement of whether my daughter's not talking to me, or I'm having a really hard time getting through to her, she's not listening to me. Like, my discouragement comes out as anger, and I just get angry and I start pressing it harder, or I say, well, let me put some more controls on her. No, well, you don't get this, you don't do that, and that just shuts her down more. And then in the past, what I've done is I've isolated or just kind of brood or how self-pity, like you're saying, Russ, like, oh man, I'm failing. I'm blowing this. Like, I don't.
Can you talk a little more about that, Ray? Because I think what sometimes we as men don't do is we talk a lot about the problem and what we need to solve or fix, but we don't talk about our emotions. What are the emotions surrounding the discouragement that you end up feeling? Like, I don't think any kid does anything the way we want it with any consistency, because they're a human being. And so, but I think we oftentimes need to deal with our emotions and our feelings. And I think it might be, if you could talk about some men feelings that we have,
yes.
Besides anger, because I think anger's, a lot of men are like, hey, I got the anger. But I think there's some other feelings that we can have.
I mean, there's feelings where I feel hurt. I could take it personally. Like, this is a personal attack to me. I could feel insecurity of, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do, and I don't know how to handle this. There's that feeling of powerlessness. I just feel like I just have no control over this, and I can't do anything in my power. So that powerlessness, the discouragement, and also anxiety. It induces in me something. Amy could say this. I get more anxious. I get more anxious about, okay, if it's going like this, what's going to happen tomorrow? Or is this ever going to get changed? And then I get hopeless in those moments. And these emotions go on, like, I get anxious, then I get hopeless, and I'm like, and then I get really I don't know another word. I get self-loathing. Like, Ray, see, you're just terrible. You're just not you're not good at this.
So, Ray, some of us didn't go to Cal. Can you tell us what self-loathing means?
I get really self-pity. I get down on myself, or I start thinking of all the negative things of why I'm just not good at this. And so now it's less about my kid. It's about my incompetence.
So you get really negative on yourself.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and when you and when you get negative on yourself, what does that make you more discouraged or less discouraged? Does that work?
It makes me.
Does that work? Does it work to be more negative? Does that get you where you want to be?
I've tried it a lot, and honestly,
you've been working at it.
I've been working at it.
Yeah.
But honestly, what I found myself, I just get really apathetic after a while. I get so discouraged, and I'm like, this isn't changing. So, I'm not even going to try anymore. And let me just move on.
See, I think for a lot of us guys, I think that we don't like to talk about those feelings.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know I'm not a parent expert or none of that stuff, but just commenting as a parent on what you're talking about, it's easy for me to want to not deal with the emotions and fix the problem.
Yeah.
And so let me go fix my sons, or let me go or let me go solve the family dilemma, instead of sitting in the moment spiritually and praying spiritually about the fact that, and this is, I'm not trying to sound like I know what I'm doing. I'm not. I'm just saying this is what I have to deal with my own emotions. I can't help my kids with their emotions if I don't even know what mine are.
Right.
And so I think what you just shared is so excellent, because it helps us as men realize it's not, and I don't mean to be stereotypical here, but it's not just our wives that have emotions about family. Right. But sometimes we as men can act that way. We can act like, well, why, why not settle down? We'll get this under control. But we're not ever talking about emotions or whatever. Marilee, you sound like you think some things about that. So I want to hear. I want to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to inject a scripture here because it's so true in terms of we've got to connect our heart. We've got to look to our heart. But it says in Psalm 62:8, it just says, trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. And, I just know that through parenting, I felt a ton, feel a ton at times. Right. But, during the hard times, it's so easy to go to the, like Ray is saying, just the deep discouragement and sadness. And then it's hard to get out of your own way. And yet, if you really pour out your heart, like God's going to be able to, you have to go look at your heart with God is what I'm trying to say. It's not
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know, I do laugh because I do know it has been a process for, Stone to, to be able to recognize an emotion and... And
there we go.
Yeah, and to see his heart.
Yeah.
And whereas I would, I'm not trying to say I've got it all together, but where I would start a prayer off with, oh God, I'm so anxious and, I feel so much. And he'd be, that wasn't Stone's first go-to in a prayer time together,
Yeah.
It was more like you're saying, Russ, how to fix this problem and God give us the, wisdom or whatever, which is awesome. I think it's the combination of the two, right?
Yes.
I mean, I have to be more of a fixer and less of a feeler at all times, and I think that's where faith comes in, But anyway, yeah.
Well, the reason I think it's important what you and Ray are talking about, and I can bring Amy and Stone in here and they can just jump in, is because I think it's easy to underestimate how discouraged parents are. I'm not being negative, and I don't think it's about they're discouraged just because they're selfish. I think parents are discouraged because they've been in 2+ years of pandemic. Right. And certainly different people are responding different ways. Some people are going, I'm just going to go back to living my life. That's fine. And I'm not going to do any mitigation. And people are really happy they don't have to do any mitigation. And that's fine. But the issue is that 2 years have gone by, and no matter what I say, you say, those 2 years had an impact. Yeah. And if the things that impacted us don't start to come out, then they're going to go deeper in and they're going to become more problematic. And I think that there's a tendency to think only kids with mental health problems are affected. But I think everyone has mental health. Therefore, everyone is affected in their mental health. Right. And so while we may not be clinically diagnosed as something, we can still have a great deal of anxiety. We can still have depressive thoughts about ourselves as parents.